What is up, what is up, what is up? Welcome to the Mitch Davis Show. I'm your host, Mitch Davis, founder of the MitchDavisShow.com, podcast host of the Mitch Davis Show and co-host of the Hit It to Hoover SEC Baseball podcast. On today's Mitch Davis Show podcast, we're going to be joined by an Ole Miss legend, Mr. David Kellum, himself, voice of the Ole Miss Rebels. We're going to be talking all things Ole Miss baseball and their national championship run, their magical run in the postseason where the Ole Miss Rebels only lost one game in its entirety. What an incredible run for the Ole Miss Rebels. So it was an honor to talk to David Kellum. David Kellum has been around for over 40 years. This guy is a living, breathing legend in the broadcasting world. He's seen a lot of great Ole Miss moments, seen a lot of great SEC moments, but none really come close to being able to be there in Omaha at the College World Series to call Ole Miss's national championship. But before we get into the interview, make sure you head on over to the website, themitchdavisshow.com. Follow me on Twitter, MitchDavis_8. We're going to have college football previews coming out daily. Going to be having podcast interviews with coaches and media members leading up until the kickoff of the 2022 college football season. But at this time, I would like to welcome the legendary David Kellum to the Mitch Davis Show podcast. I am joined now by an Ole Miss legend, a radio personality of the Ole Miss Rebels for 45 years, Mr. David Kellum. DK, how are you doing? Congratulations on the national championship.
Hey, Mitch, thank you so much. Doing great. We're still kind of pinching ourselves at this point, but yeah, it's been a wild, crazy season, but it ended in an incredible fashion, that's for sure.
Got to ask you, has it set in? You know, you and I were talking before we came on air. Has it set in yet that Ole Miss is national champions?
You know, it's crazy. We got to the postseason. We felt like if we just get in, and we got in, that we could do some damage, not necessarily win it all, but played really well. We got to the Coral Gables Regional, had to fight a tropical storm. There was even rumors it might not get played in Miami, would advance because it didn't play. That actually benefited our golf program the year we won the national championship, as the regional got washed out and the top three seeds got to advance. So that was going on. Then we realized we would get to play, and the win over Miami was huge. When Tim got the double there. So to win the Coral Gables Regional was incredible. Then going to Southern Miss, who had an incredible team, and to shut them out 2 days was hard to believe. And then we get to the College World Series, and you look up and you're playing all Western Division teams of the SEC, and you're like, really? Do we have to do this again? And so got through that, and then got to Oklahoma. And then the second game, you felt like you got a chance to win this, obviously, at that point. But in the second game, we're behind. And I remember Brad Henderson and I were talking during a break and said, hey, look, we're going to be okay. If we don't win this one, we got DeLucia going tomorrow. Mitch, we got Mallets can pitch in the middle. We got BJ that can finish it. We're going to beat them tomorrow. So there was a level of confidence about tomorrow. And then all of a sudden, boom, you get some runs. They have two wild pitches. You got a lead. And then the next time we got to a break to actually talk about it, Hindu said, DK, we're 3 outs away from winning this thing. I said, I know it. And there comes Brandon Johnson into the game, and you're figuring, okay, we really got a shot at this. And boom, 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 he strikes out 3 and we win it. So it happened so fast just within that game. It was just kind of shocking that we split that game to get the win and then win the national championship. But it has been surreal, to say the least, especially the way this season went. We struggled so much in the middle of the year, and to get it going at the end and take it all the way to the finish line is just it's a book. Somebody needs to write a book.
DK, I got to ask you, what goes into that final call of being national champion? Is that something that you practice, or is that just something that naturally flows out? Because honestly, it was one of the best final calls I've ever heard.
Well, I appreciate that. But, you know, several people asked me when we got to Oklahoma, you got something prepared? Are you going to say something? I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll mess that up. I've always been a guy in the moment, reactionary. And so I didn't prep anything. And like I said, the game flipped so fast. But just called it like I normally call it, nailed it. Had several of my radio buddies send me, oh, you nailed that call. But I really didn't prepare anything. I just called the game like I normally do. Plenty of excitement, obviously. And I'm glad I didn't mess it up, because that was a huge moment, to say the least. But no, I've always thought of myself, Mitch, as a kind of conduit to the fans. I'm an Ole Miss fan myself, even though I'm a broadcaster and yada yada. But I've always, with a Ole Miss degree, kind of felt that I had a license to be a homer, for one thing, and always thought that my connection to the fans is to describe a game as if they weren't there. And I've done that for years and years. And so I just wanted the moment to be accurate, and also to tell what actually was happening, and then just kind of let the sounds, natural sounds, kind of fill the gaps. But it did turn out to be a pretty good call, I must say so myself. But nothing planned, just jump in there and do it.
I want to ask you, because obviously we're going to talk about the team, talk about the national championship, but I grew up listening to John Ward, yourself. My dad would play Kaywood Ledford, growing up a Kentucky fan on my dad's side of the family. Being a fan and also being the radio broadcaster, when you have moments like you call the national championship, what does that mean to you personally?
It's huge. I've been doing it a long time, 44 years. And it's funny you mentioned those other men. When I first got in the league, John Ward was at Tennessee. Kaywood Ledford was at Kentucky. Larry Munson was at Georgia. You had Jim Fife at Auburn. You had Jack Criswell at Mississippi State. I mean, just on and on it went, these legends of that era. And Wes Durham, who was at Vanderbilt at the time, we were in a meeting with these guys, just kind of sitting there, and Wes leaned over to me and said, "Are you intimidated?" And I said, "Absolutely." And of course, Wes's dad was a legendary broadcaster himself at North Carolina, Woody Durham. But those men were so good to me. Loved to pick their brains, get advice from them and all. And then eventually I became one of them, I guess, just from a longevity standpoint. But it's special. We all, when you're covering the same team on a regular basis, whether you went to school there or not, you just get close to the coaches, you get close to the players, and you want them to have a degree of success. I know that national television broadcasters, or radio for that matter, is a little bit different. You don't really have anything vested, and you really want to, stay neutral in the middle. And that's why fans through the years will say, I don't like listening to those TV guys because they don't like us. So it's not necessarily they don't like you. They just are not loving on you like your local radio guy is. But we love the journey. I think it's important. I was on a deal the other day, and I don't want to marginalize getting to do the midweek game against whoever. Those are exciting and fun to do, and just going to get the best seat in the house and watching a game is kind of cool. But if you can get to the pinnacle and get to the top, it's really, really special. And I didn't know that till now, but it was really incredible for me to be able to experience a national championship.
We'll say this as a youngin' in the business here, and kind of watching you guys that have a podcast. I grew up a Kentucky fan. Like my dad's side, they're all from Louisville, big Kentucky fans. But the closer that I've gotten to the Ole Miss program, whether it be Kermit Davis in basketball, Kiffin in football, and now Bianco in baseball, the more and more I started to cheer for Ole Miss. And, when I was watching in my living room last Sunday, I really felt the connection, and I think you really just hit it on the head a little bit, because as much as you spend time around that program, and you want to see Bianco do good, you want to see those coaches do good, and it just means so much to both the fan base and to you personally. It's a really cool. I think you really just hit that one on the nail on the head. Follow up a little bit. I want to ask you about a guy named Tim Elko. This guy, there are really no words to describe what he means to the program and what he means to Ole Miss and Oxford. Talk about Tim Elko and the difference he made on this team.
Well, and that's a perfect example of what we're already talking about. You get close to the players. If you're a national broadcaster, you may interview a Tim Elko, but you don't get to know a Tim Elko. And in my case, being able to get to know him and what he stands for. We're both men of faith, and just to see what he had gone through and to fight through that and to get to this point is just unbelievable. He's a very steady person. When he got the injury last year, I talked about his career on the celebration thing. The first couple of years, he didn't really play a whole lot. I mean, he's caught in a log jam. We've always had some really good talent. Last year, he sort of exploded onto the scene, had a phenomenal year. Then the ACL hits, and he told us that I'm going to be back. And, with ACL, you just don't expect a person to be back in the same season. And he was able to get back and had a great finish to last year, got us into the postseason. We got to a super regional. And then this year, he was just phenomenal from the start to the finish. But all those guys went through this tough stretch in the middle of the year. We was trying to figure out the pitching. We also, lost Kevin Graham, who's his roommate, and Kevin had the broken hand and missed a month. And so we really appreciated not having him because Kevin's incredible, and it didn't really protect Tim in the lineup. We get Graham back, he gets back on track, and things kind of take off. But what was really neat about Tim, and from a leadership standpoint, never panicked, said, hey, hang in there with us. And even in post-game radio interviews, Tim would say, don't give up on us. Kevin did the same thing. Don't give up on us. We're going to keep going. But it was really easy to look at the record and give up, if you know what I mean. But he was a very steady influence on not only the fan base, but also the players as well. But he is a guy of high character, and it doesn't mean that we haven't had some of those guys of high character in the past. But there's no question that Tim is a really, really special guy.
Two other guys really come to mind on this team, DeLucia and also the mayor of Tupelo, Hunter Elliott himself. Talk about those two guys. And, I mean, this wouldn't be an Ole Miss baseball podcast without talking about those two guys.
Well, my favorite person in Tupelo all these years was Elvis, but I think Elliott just passed him. He's number one for sure. The beginning of the year, and I know some people say, well, it took so long to figure out the pitching, but it made sense to put Dylan in the bullpen. He's got a rubber bounce back arm. And so to get him in a pen, you knew you could get maybe 2 games a weekend out of him. That made sense to me. In fact, he did pretty good in relief. Hunter was one of the 3 hotshot freshmen that we weren't real sure. And to be honest with you, Riley Maddox probably was the guy that had the lead at that point amongst those, and then had the elbow injury and had to have Tommy John. And then you had Mason and Elliott. And so the starting pitching didn't work out kind of the way we wanted to. And so Coach Bianco made the decision to go to Dylan, who'd been a starter all his life, which was huge, obviously, as you can tell, and then chose Hunter Elliott to be the second guy, freshman, very even keel. Things don't bother him. Mason stayed in the bullpen, did really well in the bullpen. So when the decision was made to put those guys in the regular rotation, huge payoff. Both are extremely confident in different ways, but very gifted and talented, and they pitched extremely well down the stretch. And if you had to point to just one thing, and I don't think you can really point to one thing, but if you wanted to point to one thing, those two guys and how they performed the rest of the season made the difference.
David, a couple more questions I have for you. This next one about Mike Bianco. Obviously, a lot of heat was on Mike Bianco, and he's embraced it. He's talked about it, but he's overcome that. Talk about that moment for Mike and what that really meant to him, getting that monkey off his back and getting that national championship.
Oh, I think it was absolutely huge. I tell people that Mike is the one that raised the bar in our baseball program. And so he created the expectations. We got to several super regionals, and I never want to say we should have, but we could have gotten to Omaha more times with the different super regionals, be able to punch the ticket in 14 and do it again, of course, this particular year. But it's difficult. It's very hard. Ask the Tennessee fans. One of the best teams ever couldn't get there. So it's hard to get there. Arkansas a year ago, kind of the same situation. Incredible team. Cox was a phenomenal player. So sometimes it just doesn't work out. In our case, we're 4 or 5 more plays away from maybe being to Omaha 5 or 6 times in his career. But I know it was weighing on him heavily, not the chatter and the, what's going on with the different people that are throwing darts at you and all that. I don't think that, not that it didn't bother him, but I don't think that figured into, doing anything differently. But he stayed the course. I know it was frustrating that we couldn't get there more often, but stayed the course. This year just happened to work out. What an unlikely year after the middle of the season. We knew we were a really good baseball team early, but the middle of the season made things kind of tough, but very gratifying for him. I know he's extremely happy, and he's handled it without an "I told you so" deal. I mean, he's going to try to put us in the best position he can every single year. He surrounded himself with some really, really good coaches. And I've told some other folks that said, well, Bianco just can't win the big one. Well, that's not true. He's won several big ones through the years. And it's a matter of staying with somebody. And I really appreciate Keith and the athletic department saying, hey, we're going to stick with him. Got to get, to the finish line. Maybe this year will be the year. But do you want somebody that keeps knocking on the door all the time? And can get through occasionally, or you want to gamble and go a route where you maybe not even knocking on the door. So it's a unique story. Mike would be the first to tell you, wish we could have gotten there more to this point, but to win the national championship, it makes all the rest of that worth it for sure.
I think it's a follow-up question to that. What does this national championship mean to the state of Mississippi? Obviously, Mississippi State got theirs last year, now Ole Miss. What does this mean to the state of Mississippi?
I think if you look at them together, now Ole Miss fans don't want to hear this. Mississippi State fans don't want to hear this. But if you look at the two championships back to back, that is an incredible story, remarkable story. I mean, we're one of the smallest states in the country. Now, don't be fooled. Ole Miss and Mississippi State not only recruit the Magnolia State aggressively and get some really good players inside the borders, if you will, but both have national recruiting in their hip pockets and attract players from all over the country because of the facilities, because of the atmosphere and all of that. But still, to win back-to-back two schools out of the same state is just amazing. It really is. And you think about, the other levels of baseball in our state, too, that have been so good. The passion for baseball. I mean, Southern Mississippi had incredible crowds when we were down there for the super regionals, and they've had a lot of success in postseason too. But I think it's huge. I mean, anytime you can bring that kind of positive reaction to your state, there's so many negative things across the world these days that it's kind of nice to have something refreshing in that nature. But for Ole Miss to win it this year, Mississippi State the previous year back to back is just really, really huge, not only for each school individually, but for the state.
Two more questions I have for you, and these are actually kind of fun questions I look forward to asking you. I want to ask you about your wife and her following you throughout this entire journey. You posted a picture after the national championship of you guys sharing a moment there on the field and sharing an embrace. And just want to ask you what she means to you and your career and all the support that she gives you.
Well, it's incredible. You're going to get me crying here. She and I are high school sweethearts. We met each other in junior high, started dating in high school, went to school together. And, when Mary and I first started dating, and I picked her up at her house, she was sitting in the living room watching an NFL game by herself. Her brothers weren't with her. And I said, this might work out. So she's always been a pretty good sports fan. Didn't play sports. She was in a band in high school and all. But loves Ole Miss, loves the games, and we've traveled together a lot. Of course, it's kind of depended on the kid's age and when she could go and couldn't go, et cetera, et cetera. But we've been a team for a long, long time. And it was really, really neat for her to be able to be there and experience the national championship and all. But, just like any other aspect of covering games, when you're one of the lead announcers, and I'm doing all three sports, it makes for a long 10 months. And sometimes family suffers a little bit. I miss some things with my kids and different things like that. But she's always been super, super supportive. And we've gotten the kids to go with us through the years. They're both adults now. But it's been a long, long journey. And she's definitely been a part of Mary. Loves Ole Miss, likes what I do. And so it's worked out really, really good through the years.
Last question I have for you. Obviously, you've been around Ole Miss for a very long time and Lafayette County native. I want to ask you what Ole Miss means to you. I've never heard you answer this question. I've always wanted you to ask this question of you. So what does Ole Miss mean to you personally?
Well, it really goes back to my family. My mother taught in the theater department. My dad was in placement and financial aid. My aunt was in speech communications, became eventually number 2 in charge at Ole Miss under Dr. Kayet, if you will. I had an uncle that was in the ticket office, the central ticket office, that sold, tickets to plays and different things. Aunt in court reporting. I've got cousins now involved in Ole Miss. I mean, we've just been, our family's been ingrained in the school a long, long time. So the uniqueness of also being a graduate of Ole Miss myself, teaching the journalism department periodically too, but that uniqueness, and then being hired by the school that you attended, which is rare to a certain degree too in our world of broadcasting, and be able to stay at the same place for such a long, long time. I mean, I can't tell you how much Ole Miss means to me, and how much I poured my heart into, sharing the good news of Ole Miss. Through the years, we've had various things that weren't so pretty, but Ole Miss has always fought like mad to get things right, and then to be excellent in so many different things. And a lot of people don't see that, but we've been very blessed with the administration we've had through the years on campus, and the athletic department. The people who've been involved in that have been really, really good. And I've gotten to meet tons and tons of people. So the school in general means a lot to me, but it's really more about the relationships that you build through the years too. But I'm awfully proud of my degree from the University of Mississippi, and then awfully happy that I've been able to have one of the best seats in the house to get to talk about it each and every ball game.
David, thank you so much for coming on the Mitch Davis Show podcast. It's been an honor to talk with you.
Thank you so much, Mitch. Appreciate you.
You have been listening to the Mitch Davis Show podcast. I've been your host, Mitch Davis. Very special thank you for David Kellum for coming on the podcast today. Talk about the national champions, Ole Miss baseball. What an incredible journey that was. Be sure you follow me on Twitter, MitchDavis_8. Head on over to the website, check out football articles, and even read some of the older articles about Ole Miss baseball just by simply typing it on your browser, themitchdavisshow.com. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to David Kellum for coming on the Mitch Davis Show podcast. It's an honor to talk to such a legend about a legendary moment in Ole Miss athletics history. Thank you so much again for listening. Have a great week.